Neolithic sites always seem to be enigmatic, mysterious, isolated, or inaccessible. Yet the reality is that they can be found almost anywhere that land hasn't been engulfed by modern towns and cities or taken over by industrial-scale farming.
And the reason for this is simple. Successful settlements don't move. They just get progressively bigger over time. As a general rule, if you live in a town or a city today, you're living where people first settled thousands of years ago. The traces of their lives, if they haven't been destroyed by building, they're still there, right beneath your feet. So to gain a clearer picture of the scale of their communities, we need to look away from our modern settlements to the lands that were rich and fertile long ago, but which failed for one reason or another, forcing their inhabitants to move away from their homes, to move to new pastures, to where land that once supported sheep and goats has now for long months of the year become so arid that it's really only suitable for the deep roots of vines.
And one of the best places to get a sense of that scale is down here in southwestern France in the Languedoc, a region steeped in history with legends of Cathars, Templars and crusading knights, romantic chateaux and mountaintop fortresses. Estimates of average population density across Europe during the Neolithic period vary wildly, from just a few people per square kilometre to 60 or more. And one thing we can say with absolute certainty is that there is absolutely no certainty of the true numbers of people within these social groups and settlements.
But something we can be sure of is that a site like this can only be created by a large community of people coming together. This is Morel das Fadas, the Hill of the Fairies. Built around 5,500 years ago, it's the largest passage tomb in southern France, and it clearly needed a whole lot of time and effort to create. This capstone, it weighs 25 to 30 tons. Now the whole site is made of local sandstone. You can find it right here. But that 30-ton capstone, that's made of limestone. And the nearest outcrop that could have come from is 3 kilometres from here. Now, look, imagine how long it must have taken to fashion these beautifully shaped portal stones. That's amazing.
If this is the largest passage grave in southern France, then we know the local populations weren't particularly small. So apart from the big, flamboyant monuments of the larger settlements, surely there should be other, smaller, more familiar types of grave built within smaller social groups, like dolmens, for instance.
Yes, there are. And here's the thing, there are loads of them.
In fact, here in the Hérault, a region smaller than the county of Devon in England, there are 2 stone circles, 149 menhirs and 448 dolmens.
And that's just the ones that have been found. And the reason that there are so many is that all the vines are in the flat lowlands. The craggy uplands here, or the mountainous uplands further south, are far too impractical even for vines. So the land has been left to become a sprawling scrubland of box, juniper and bramble. Dolmens like this one, the Grand Dolmen de Lauriol north of Siron, are just left to crumble and decay, overlooking the sweeping panoramas chosen by the builders.
Some have been dated to late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, but many remain completely unexcavated, which makes it hard to infer any deep information. Intriguingly, throughout the region are dense clusters of dolmens, hinting that perhaps these cemeteries were once far more common and widespread than we imagine. In France, these concentrations of prehistoric tombs are called necropolis, quite literally from the Greek city of the dead. Not Far to the east is the Necropolis de Bois Bas, the necropolis of the low wood. Engulfed and reclaimed by nature, it can be hard to find the dolmens, but an interesting little tease here is that one of the graves contained a single amber bead, Baltic amber, possibly Scandinavian.
Well, that's quite a long way from home, isn't it?
Perhaps more enigmatically, another tomb a couple of miles away was also found to contain a single amber bead. Of ritual significance, maybe? But it's equally possible that they were placed in the tombs by the same individual who had a reason to send the deceased off with identical offerings. But the concentrations of these tombs raise other questions. It's true that sometimes there are small regional differences, but essentially the design and construction of a dolmen is a fairly standard affair. Upright stones supporting a capstone, all of which may or may not have been covered by an earth mound. And it's commonly accepted that they were the tombs of the ruling or elite classes. And if that really is the case, then we still have absolutely no idea how the bodies of the rest of society were treated. But then again, this is couverte de Saint Eugène, the passage grave of Saint Eugène, another instance of the church stamping its brand on pagan culture.
The site dates from the Chalcolithic, so that's late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, and it was full of surprises when the site was excavated nearly a century ago. It contained the remains of 300 people, along with a wealth of grave goods. And we're not used to seeing large quantities of grave goods in communal tombs. Jewellery included beads and pendants, 28 pendants actually. There was a copper dagger, rings, a gold bead, arrow tips, a spear point, obsidian blades, an extraordinary variety of animal teeth, pottery, the list goes on.
And that is intriguing because we normally see a wealth of grave goods associated with individual burials. It's obviously impossible to say without a great deal of laboratory work using modern techniques, but what are we to infer from this? That this was a far more egalitarian society, or is it that the 300 burials represent the community's elite over many generations? There seems to be no rule for how many individuals can be buried within each dolmen. All across Europe there are dolmens which held the remains of 1 or 2 individuals, some with half a dozen, others with considerably more.
But then sometimes patterns do emerge. I'm a little further south here in the Aude, and somewhere in there is the Necropolis de la Clape. Now, actually, I was hoping that I'd be able to translate that for you, but I can't find any etymology whatsoever. This place is evocatively called the Necropolis of the Clape. I've got a guidebook here, and this was written 20 years ago. And there's been clearly 20 years of growth since he wrote this. But apart from that, I don't think anybody other than this man came here in the last century. He says, come as far as the ruined Bergerie. I see no ruined Bergerie. Oh, well, that could be a ruined Bergerie. That could definitely be a ruined Bergerie. Right, that's 20 years of growth. Good grief. Well, in that case, he said that the first tomb is 50 metres to the north of the ruined Bergerie. And north is great, north is up. This is not a path. Ow. Oh, for God's sake, normally you get a signpost and a track. I should have brought my machete. If you want to find dolmens that no other human has seen before, I think this is the very place to go. No, going back the other way. That's just solid bramble in there. That is just... Do you know what? The man who wrote that guidebook, I bet he never came here. He was probably copying somebody else's words from 200 years ago. Gotta love a guidebook, haven't you? I mean, can you imagine if this was in Britain, an actual necropolis of dolmens? It would be tended and marked on a map. This is unbelievable. I tell you what, though, I mean, from a point of view of building materials, you can see why they did it up here. This is phenomenal stone. Yay! Dolmen! That's a lot of decay, isn't it? It looks like the cairn itself would have been pretty big, though. If you look at the actual, if you know, this is the centre, and that is cairn material. I mean, it's hard to really tell with all that degradation, but you know, they did like to give their dead a good view. But then I suppose if you've got to lie in the ground forever, you're going to want something that you're not going to get bored of looking at. Wow, okay. Oh, that'll do. Oh. Well, that was easy. Do you know what? Learning about some of these dolmens, I was reminded of Poulnabrone in County Clare in Ireland. Now, okay, I mean, loads of the French dolmens are significantly more eroded than those you'll find in Ireland, but the correlations remain. Poulnabrone was found to contain the remains of 33 individuals, only one of whom was older than 30 years of age. Here, 2 of the tombs were found to contain the remains of 24 individuals. Now, okay, it might be a coincidence, but maybe 24 was in some way significant. The thing is that in one of those tombs, of the 24 individuals, only one was an adult male, and in the other tomb, of the 24, only 9 of them were older than 10 years of age. There really does seem to be something about the young going on. But bearing in mind that of all the sites that have been excavated, the vast majority were being worked on between 60 and 100 years ago. What on earth might we learn if all those remains were re-examined using modern laboratory techniques? Would DNA analysis show us that all these people were related? And that one adult male, buried with 23 women and children, would we find that he was father and grandfather to those children, or maybe husband to the women? I have to say, though, that my major concern, really, is that having found my way into this place, I've now got to find my way out again. Oh, dear. The larks we have.
Clearly, these communities thrived and expanded, their descendants probably living in the towns and villages we still see today. In the same way that tourists in England are seldom aware of anything other than Stonehenge, visitors to this region only come to these big and impressive monuments.
Anyone genuinely interested in prehistory would be enthralled at the wealth of archaeological remains to be found here.
The sites continue, on through the mountains, down into Spain. We can only imagine how many there may once have been. But solitary and enigmatic? No. They're everywhere.